Hello, welcome to the Viewpoint. I am Mamadou Mbouch. On the 7th of January 2019, the country embarked on a very serious, for the first time we were embarking on such a thing, on a truth-finding mission. A remarkable thing after what has been called sort of the trauma of 22 years. So 2 years later, we've come to the end of that journey. 871 days, according to the chairman of the commission. 392 witnesses. Actually, we've even got one prosecutions going on as a result, tied to the TRRC hearings. So really, where have we arrived? I mean, it was quite interesting, the lead counsel's closing remarks, the summation. Everybody talking about it. Even the incoming ICC chief had something to say about that. Tongues have been wagging, fingers twitching at the keyboard. So, what have we just gone through? What have we learned? What next? Here to help me chew over these questions and more, of course, the lead counsel himself, Mr. Esafar. Welcome to the Viewpoint.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm not sure I could have put it as eloquently as you did, but thank you anyway. That was a beautiful way of putting it.
You're absolutely welcome. Yes, now, this is quite interesting because with your closing remark, you said that that wasn't scheduled. It wasn't part of it. Sort of impromptu, that sort of thing. But the eloquence of it, the seeming purposefulness of it. Remarkable. What was the impulse? What was the immediate prick? What pricked you to do that?
Sitting there, I thought the country needed to hear what we just accomplished. The country needed to hear from us what we think we had just done. It was indeed impromptu. Even when I started speaking, I really didn't know what the next sentence was going to be. And that's why in quite a number of areas it was a little tentative and a little deliberate. Because it was all not planned. But I thought that it was important that the country hear what we had just accomplished. Because when I sat there and jotted a few points, and suddenly the picture emerged that what has not been said over the past few years has now become very crystal clear. You will recall that just before Jammeh fell, the ICC prosecutor, whom I respect greatly, Mrs. Fatou Bensouda, made a statement that the violations that happened in Gambia were not up to ICC threshold, and as such, the ICC could not intervene in what was happening in Gambia.
That was the gravity threshold.
That was the gravity threshold.
Mm-hmm.
So, prior to our conclusion of the hearings, I was toying with that idea, trying to look at the issues to see whether we have in fact reached that threshold. And when I did the maths, the results were quite glaring. And take, for instance, in Kenya, I have said this before, it was a population of about 42 million in 2007. And the number of people killed in the 2007 post-election violence was about 1,360 or thereabout. If you do the maths, Kenya is about 21 times the size of Gambia's population. If you multiply 21 by the 240 thereabout, who we know were killed during the Jammeh era, pursuant to his instructions, orders, or policies, you would see that we've gone way past the mark. And not only that, there are other serious violations. The sexual violence of our sisters and our girls. That is very serious. When we talk about this sexual violence, it's not about those who Jammeh raped or those he sexually abused. It's not just that. We are talking about a whole state apparatus that was involved in committing sexual violence. Take, for instance, the NIA officers themselves would tell you it was part of the modus operandi of NIA to strip a person naked when a person is being interrogated. That was state policy. And who do you attribute state policy to? To the head of state.
The buck stops with the head.
Exactly. And a lot of these things were done under his instructions because, I mean, we've had evidence where he would call and say, give this person the full treatment. And they all knew what that full treatment meant. It meant also sexually abusing the person. So if you put up all that together with the murders, you're beginning to have a big picture of crimes against humanity. But look at the unlawful detentions. Thousands of people were detained unlawfully on the basis of the policies that he put in place. So, and that is why I was quick to say that if you look at this, the picture that emerges is crimes against humanity. That's what screams in my head. But thankfully, I have just been vindicated. The moment I said that, the incoming ICC prosecutor tweeted and said he agrees.
Absolutely.
But few days ago, if not even yesterday, Fatou Bensouda did an interview in Senegal, and she agreed with me that the violations that happened in Gambia has reached ICC threshold.
Absolutely.
It's crimes against humanity.
Certainly they've realized that.
Exactly.
Yes. Mm.
So, and this is why this TRRC has been hugely successful. It's now quite apparent, it's now clear to everybody that what happened here was crimes against humanity. If you have the incoming prosecutor and the outgoing prosecutor of the ICC both agreeing that what happened in Gambia was or still amounts to crimes against humanity, and it's the TRRC that has unveiled that, unraveled that, I think the TRRC has really done a fantastic job.
Absolutely. So that is it. You have this congregation, as it were, of so many different factors that really prompted you, pushed you to really what you did, even though it wasn't scheduled. Yeah. Then how would you respond to this? That weren't you a bit afraid, perhaps afterwards, that you had preempted, I've heard this argument made, that you had preempted the report? Because all of that you've said could have waited and put in the report.
No, not at all. Not at all. Well, a lot of people expected that I would give a closing statement. What would have been in that closing statement? The whole essence of a closing statement is to try to sum up the case that you have and try to convince those persons who are entrusted with the responsibility to pass judgment over the evidence to think one way or another. Mm.
But you had not planned it, apparently. So
yes, because the thing is, what we just wanted to do at that time was just to come and say thank you, and that's it. So it was not so choreographed, as the chair would put it, for that particular purpose. But the requirements of the moment demanded that I say something beyond thank you. And that's why that statement has the impact that it does. You know, I mean, for a lawyer, I think it behoves me to characterize the evidence that I have presented, you know, so that those whose responsibility it is to judge would judge it. I mean, could it have waited for it to be in the report? Well, it could have waited, but what harm does it make? So this is not about preempting anything. This is about taking an opportunity, taking a moment to deal with a particular issue. And that is why I believe it has the impact that it has on the people.
Well, absolutely. And here also I kind of wondered how you dealt with it. Because on the one hand, you're expected to be dispassionate about the facts and how you deal with cases. And yet, on the other hand, there was also the emotional freight. You are a Gambian. Your family, members of your family were also victimized. You know, most people here in many ways, perhaps most families will say that at least one person had been victimized during that period. How did you balance the dispassion that you needed to show as a professional and the emotional freight, which you're a human being, you're a citizen?
It requires quite a bit of a balancing act. But one thing about me is I am always passionate about whatever I do. And I am, in fact, doubly passionate about this work that I'm doing, simply because, I mean, we are rethinking our society. We are rethinking what kind of Gambia we lived in. Is this what we really want for the future? That's why the Never Again campaign is quite significant. We cannot do that without passion. We cannot do that without passion. If we are committed to what we are doing, we have to be sincere to it. And we cannot do it without passion. I, for one, cannot do it without passion, because this is about us. This is about who we are as a people. Where are we coming from? What has happened to us, and what have we learned from this, and where do we want to go? This is the moment we are at. And this is quite a deeply emotional moment. You see, but one thing is for certain. I believe I'm a professional. When I look at things dispassionately. That's why a lot of people think that I am against Jammeh. I always tell them, no, I am not against Jammeh. I am not also for Jammeh. I am for justice. And the only thing that I see is the truth and justice. I have received evidence against Jammeh that is false. I discounted it because it is false. I have received evidence against Jammeh that I cannot, well, I don't believe is of high probative value. I put it aside. And the reason why I do that is because I want to jealously guard this record. We want truth, and only pure truth in the record. And that's why when some people come to lie, I cross-examine them, because I want to bring out the truth. You see? So we do this because we want our Truth Commission to bring out the truth about what has happened in the past, so that we can have a good historical record of the things that happened. Because if we know the truth, would we be able to identify what were the problems in our society, what were the ills in our society, and how to deal with them in the future. And that is why we are doing this. Some witnesses came and got it very easy. Some witnesses came and it was very rough. And the reason why that was the case was I had an obligation. The obligation is to do my utmost to bring out the evidence, the truth out of the people who come there. And that's what I try to do, and to do it faithfully, according to my oath as a lawyer, and to do it professionally. And also to do it to the best of my ability, because that is the only thing I should do for my society. That is an onerous obligation.
Absolutely. But here, I will ask you this. You're a trial lawyer, you've done all of that. What is the difference between running a commission and doing a trial in court? How did it constrain you? How have you had to deal with, for instance, witnesses? Because they were playing this legal game, some of us thought that Edward Singate was trying to play that game, whereas with you, you knew that it was a commission. What's the difference? How did it constrain you in a way?
It's a bit constraining, because in a court of law, you would have a judge that would be an arbiter, and on every issue would rule one way or another. And there would be strict observance or strict compliance with certain procedural rules, and also some strict compliance to decorum. But this is a commission of inquiry. One is we wanted to make it interesting, so that the Gambian people would be interested in watching. Because if they do not watch, they would not know what happened, and they wouldn't learn from it, and people would not heal. There would not be any reconciliation. Then there's no point for the Truth Commission. So we had to make it interesting for people. And that's why sometimes I inject a bit of humor. Sometimes I dig into our local ways of doing things just to make it more Gambian, more interesting, and so forth. But if you look at the rules too, the rules are a bit rather lax because it's a Truth Commission. You know, we have said many times, excuse me, if you lie, you may go to mile 2. But we haven't sent anybody to mile 2 for lying. But if it was a court of law, the judge would put the hammer down and say, I hold you for contempt. You know.
But you had the power to do something like that.
We had the power to do that. But we did not want this to be very loyally. We did not want it to be legalistic. And that's why, for most of the time, I wear African clothes. Just because I wanted to make it look like a strictly Gambian soul-searching moment, if I may call it that. You know, so there's a huge difference. The rules of procedure are not as strict as you would find in a court of law. I mean, the procedure for bringing out the evidence also would be more strict in a regular court than in this. But all the same also, we try to bear in mind some of the rules, especially the rules of natural justice and some of the rights issues that would happen in a normal trial. But yes, you're right, there are significant differences, but sometimes people don't show the differences. I have been criticized, though, for being too loyally at times. But I found myself in a situation where people would come and refuse to speak the truth or try to lie to us. And if I have tools in my repertoire to bring that out, to show that a person is lying, to show that this is the truth, I would do it, because we're here to try to search for the truth. So, but you know, there have been a lot of armchair lawyers who would sit there and try to analyze things, and you know. And also, one thing I like about Gambians is that we are very opinionated. On everything, we all have our opinions, and people have said whatever they felt was going on. They have assessed the situation, but by and large, I think there is almost near unanimity that what happened in Gambia was rather unique. And it's been said all around the world.
Yeah, absolutely. And we also know what people often say about opinions, yeah. But I wouldn't go there. so yeah, then, but interestingly though, yes, different purposes, different processes, you know, the commission and the courts, yet it had the status of a high court. So there was that link, that legal embedding. I do not know that authority.
But that is necessary also, because you don't want people to take this lightly, because this is very important. You take the route for a truth commission because you want certain results. You want the therapeutic effect. You also want certain consequences like reconciliation, healing and closure, you see, and not necessarily just a trial and a conviction and a sentence. So you want different results. You want to write the historical record, and you don't want the constraints of a trial to prevent the arrival at the truth. You see, so, and that is why a lot of countries would, at certain moments in history, opt for a truth commission. So, but you recall there was one time I said that the truth commission is not a toothless bulldog. We have powers, and the decisions of the commission is akin to the decision of a high court. And when a person is aggrieved by a decision of the commission, it is appealed to the high court, to the court of appeal. So this is to strengthen the commission, so that it would not be treated with contempt by people. Because if they think this is not serious, nobody would give it second thought.
Absolutely. So you had to have that legal teeth,
Exactly.
if you like.
Exactly.
Before we get into the nitty-gritty, the details of our case here, the transitional justice theory and systems and all of that, there is some controversy around it, isn't it?
Yes.
How would you justify what we had here? For some people, all these notions about transitional justice, they sort of merely represent the current contemporary hegemony, as it were, of ideas. So these things are imposed on the weak, but one can never touch the powerful, as it were. How do you see that?
But that is certainly not true. What happened in Gambia showed quite clearly that that is not true. Certain things came out.
No, what I mean is internationally, you have certain voices, for instance, in the US, maybe they are citizens, they wouldn't want their citizens to face anything like that, or universal jurisdiction, which I think they are tied together somehow, isn't it? So what do you make of that?
Yes, but I think in our situation, we had choices to make. And the choice was, because we all know that terrible things have happened in our country. So the question is how you deal with them. And that is why I applaud the former Attorney General, Abubakar Tambedu, for really thinking through Gambia's problems and coming up with a formula which he thought would help solve some of the problems. And for a country coming out of dictatorship, you have choices, because crimes would have been committed. So you have choices. And the choices, ultimately, this question would always hang. What do you do about the crimes or the violations that were committed? Would there be some form of accountability? And what form would it take? Prosecution, or the justice route, is always there. Everybody should clamor for justice. But justice also is expensive. And it's time-consuming. But sometimes also, justice alone would not give you the best results. And that's where transitional justice or truth commissions come in to fill that void.
But one might wonder here, what do we mean by the best results?
Well, the
it's
best
value
results.
laden. It depends on what is our purpose,
Yes,
surely.
exactly. For a lot of people, what happened has already happened. All right? But for them, what is more important is to know the truth about what has happened. For some of them, it's about closure. Because if they know the truth, they'll be able to finally say, yes, we'll now let go. For others, it's about healing. It's also about forgiveness. It's also about reconciliation. But the justice system, the traditional justice system, does not necessarily give you those results. It is not about reconciliation, is it? You see, it's mainly about punishment and retribution or correction for the violations committed. Whereas this is about reconciliation, is about strengthening our humanity, is about bringing us back together, is about healing. So this is, if I may call it, the psychosocial aspects of it. Whereas the justice route is a straitjacket, is about punishment for wrongs done. So each society has to look at its own situation and decide on which is the best approach. Do you want just one result or the other, or do you want a combination of those two routes? And Gambia, we chose a combination, or like I should say, the architect Abubakar Tambedu chose the two routes, because we now have just concluded the therapeutic part, which is the public hearing. People can heal, people can reconcile and come together. The other part is coming, which is the justice route, because under our law, there has to be accountability. There is no impunity. So those who committed violations will have to face justice. That is what our law says.
Absolutely. But I've heard this said, written by political analysts, saying that with these truth commissions, in the end it seems they tend to sacrifice justice over reconciliation. Apparently in South Africa, a lot of people are not quite happy with the outcomes afterwards, and in Sierra Leone. So this is the thing, and when we look at this transitional justice theory, perhaps going back to Nuremberg, where they first used never again, where yet that was more of criminal prosecutions.
Yes.
So afterwards, such notions as reconciliation, reparation came into it. So they tend to sacrifice the justice element over the reconciliation.
Yes, that is very true. I mean, many transitional justice arrangements have suffered from that weakness. But that is not Gambia's transitional administration, transitional justice. We learned from what has happened in other countries. But Ambedu would tell you that they did study tours. They examined what happened in other countries and tried to bring the best out of those. And that is why our transitional justice, at least our Truth Commission, has been regarded as one of the best in the world, because we have managed to cover all the bases. We are not just stopping at the truth-seeking part and we leave it at that. We are saying there should be prosecutions, and the Commission shall recommend or shall make recommendations for prosecutions for those who bear the greatest responsibility for what has happened. And they also told us in the law that there is no immunity for crimes against humanity. So what that means is those who commit crimes against humanity would be prosecuted. So we do not have a choice in the matter. That is why the other day when I said what I said in my closing remarks, I said the train has already left this station. It can't be stopped. If they try to stop it in Gambia, the train would arrive in Ghana. If they try to stop it in Ghana, it may emerge somewhere in West Africa. If they try to stop it there, it may move elsewhere in Africa or may wind up in The Hague. The train has bolted. There is nothing that can be done, except if the world decides to go to sleep on Gambia. But for as long as that is not the case, a Gambian case would crystallize somewhere on charges of crimes against humanity. And that is why Fatou Bensouda said a few days ago, I don't know whether it was yesterday or day before yesterday, I read it today, that if Gambia may send a case to the ICC. If the Gambia does not, then the ICC would see what it can do. Because the rules are very clear. That is, those are the rules of complementarity in the ICC statute. And it says, if a country, if a state is unwilling or unable to prosecute, then ICC jurisdiction will kick in.
That was precisely what I thought. See, with your closing remarks, one got the sense that what an extraordinary maneuver to tighten the noose from different angles, if not Gambia, ECOWAS, Ghana, ICC. So you were tightening the noose. Then I spoke to another analyst about it. Then we were like, does he think that possibly the politicians wouldn't carry it through?
Well, all I was doing was being honest to the Gambian people. Because in our conversations, be all public discourse, there should be honesty. But it should also be anchored on knowledge. We should not just be talking for the sake of it. It has to be grounded on information and knowledge. And I was just starting that conversation. That, well, this is what we have. And from the little knowledge I have, this is the way it would proceed. And I tried to think honestly, truthfully, and methodically anchored on knowledge. And I think that that is the way we should embark in all our public discourse. But I have been vindicated. Fatou Bensouda said so. Karim Khan, the new incoming prosecutor of the ICC, says he agrees. And a lot of bloggers around the world and a lot of legal commentators agreed with me that, that this is the way it should go. So it was just an honest conversation with the Gambian people so that they would know what are the next steps. I mean, we have heard a lot of rumor going on around, being bandied around this country about alliances and issues going on behind closed doors. But it is also important that Gambians understand what is possible and what is not possible. And I think it was my responsibility at that moment to break it down to the people. Not many people here would know ICC law. I am privileged to have worked in this, so it was important that I break it down. And indeed, I do believe that it is now clear to a lot of people, because if I did not do that, this whole notion that a lot of people had, that li dara du ci génna, nothing is going to happen, I needed to dispel that notion. Yes, we have seen Hussein Habre. Yes, we have seen Charles Taylor. It's not stopping there. It's not stopping there, you know? So it's no longer fashionable for there to be impunity for violations of international human rights law.
Yes, so I will ask you this. With the Jana Commission, I've heard you mention this in another interview. We saw a white paper. The government published a white paper where they cherry-picked what they needed to do. But are you saying that with the TRRC report, possibly they might not have that leeway to do exactly as they did because of the circumstances are different and the international ramifications around this are entirely different? What are we saying here?
Well, I am saying that a government is always a government. And let's not make this mistake that the government cannot cherry pick the recommendations it would implement and those it would not implement. You cannot shackle a government, okay, and tie it down to the point that it becomes impotent. That is not the reason why we have governments. We have a government because you want to give it the power to take charge of situations and make decisions that are in the best interest of the society. Right? And listen to my words. You have a government because you want it to take charge of making decisions that should be in the best interest of the society. All right? So naturally it should cherry pick. But you have to hold them to that standard. That is this in the best interest of the society? And that is why in every polity, in every society, the polity has a responsibility to hold their governments accountable for decisions that they have made. Because their contract with the people is to do what is in the best interest of the society. You understand? But then, in our situation, much as the government has the discretion to decide what to take or what not to take, there are certain areas where their power is bridled, their power is constricted. Take, for instance, our parliament in the law signed by the president says there shall not be immunity for crimes against humanity. So the moment the commission finds that there was crimes against humanity and that A, B, C, Y, J perpetrated crimes against humanity, the hands of our government are tied. It means they cannot grant immunity to those people. You understand?
Yes.
If the government refuses to accept that what happened was crimes against humanity, it could be litigated by some interest groups. So much as we cannot completely shackle the government, they also do not have a free pass to do whatever they want. You see, there's a political price to pay, and there are also legal obstacles that they would have to face. And the political price is even stronger because the people are the government, and the government would have to do what the people want. If the government doesn't, the people can punish that government.
Yes, but I wonder, would you regard, for instance, the provision of amnesty as one of the political prices we have to pay, because, you know, some people would be given amnesty.
Yes.
That's all inbuilt within the whole concept of a truth commission. But how do you see it with some people saying that, doesn't that reinforce impunity?
No. I say no. It does not. There is a price to the truth. Because if you don't get to the truth, you won't have punishment. All right? But you can't get to the truth if you don't give anything. That's why I said when Batambedu courageously released the junglers, he knew what he was doing. I said the other day.
Was that the case of amnesty, or we haven't reached that point?
No, we haven't reached that point yet. All right? But you're going close. You understand? Because the whole essence of releasing is for them to get some reward. And that was politically, it was not necessarily, at the immediate moment, it was not the best decision, because it would open one to criticism. Some people don't like criticism at all. But looking at it really, even politically, that was the best decision he could have made. But if you put that aside, legally speaking, this is a decision that prosecutors would always make. He made the right call, because just imagine if the junglers were not released, we would never have known what has happened.
Yes, sir.
To Mercy Jammeh, to Haruna Jammeh. These are Jammeh's family members.
Absolutely.
To Jasaja Kujabi, to Sise Bujiling, and all these others. We would not have known what happened to Baba Job. We were made to believe that he died in hospital. Indeed, he died at the hospital, but in the hands of the junglers under the orders of Jammeh. We never would have known.
Absolutely, all of that granted. But I wonder, because officially we haven't given them amnesty yet.
Yes.
It is possible in your report you recommend prosecutions.
I would not go into that.
Okay.
All I can do is I can tell you the rules. The rules are that there is no immunity for crimes against humanity. But that is under statute ICC law, sorry, the TRRC's law. But there are other laws. The discretion to prosecute in this country lies with the Attorney General. So, and we don't know how the Attorney General is going to exercise that. But the saving grace for all this is that there is now universal jurisdiction. Many countries exercise universal jurisdiction. There is also the ICC. There is also the possibility of other tribunals or courts looking into all these matters. So if one escapes it in Gambia, one may not escape elsewhere. And we have seen what has happened. Even look at Michael Correa. He's arrested and is being prosecuted in the US. All right? Don't be surprised if one of these junglers gallivanting around West Africa get arrested somewhere and get prosecuted. look at Jibril Masakoy. Jibril Masakoy was one of the RUF rebels who was one of the star witnesses against Charles Taylor. He testified against Charles Taylor in the Kenya trials, and Taylor was convicted. And I don't think Taylor would have been convicted without the evidence of Jibril Masakoy. But today, Jibril Masakoy is being prosecuted in Finland for the crimes he committed in Liberia because he was sent to Finland as a refugee as part of the witness protection program. So he thought he had escaped justice, but didn't know that justice was waiting for him in Finland. And now he's being tried.
The arc of history
exactly.
is long,
exactly.
but it bends towards justice.
It always does.
We are told. We are coming towards the end. You know, at the end of the TRRC, I sat there, thought to myself, as a nation, what have we just gone through? I really needed to think about it. I'm not really sure. Remember, throughout the testimonies, especially when the junglers were coming, some people were crying, even men. Everybody was crying at one point or another. So I thought, was it catharsis? Have we got that catharsis? You used the word trauma. Quite a remarkable word from Frantz Fanon, with the post-colonial mindset, traumatized by that experience. But that trauma is still on. Our own people are traumatizing us. This is a theme about post-independence Africa. That trauma. What next?
Important and very difficult question. We've been through a difficult period of soul searching. We've been through a difficult period of publicly washing the linen, the dirty linen of our society. We've gone through a difficult moment of questioning who we are as a people, but also what is it that we want in this society. So what we've been through is quite profound, and for me, it can't be described by any other word other than catharsis. But that aside, I think Gambians now know what has happened in our country. Even for those in denial, those remains that were exhumed at at Yundum Barracks, with ligatures still on the bones, they tell their story. See, those undergarments we exhumed, they tell their story. The remains of Solo Sandeng that were exhumed at the NIA premises in Tanje, it speaks its story. And a whole lot of other things have spoken, and they have spoken loudly. That terrible things have happened in our country, and we don't want this dark chapter to return in our country. We do not want our parents to go to work and we're not sure that they would come back home. We no longer want to be in our homes and speak in low tones because we fear that somebody may be eavesdropping and that could cause us trouble. We no longer want to be in our homes and not be sure whether the maid is with us or against us. We no longer want to be in taxis and be afraid to answer the phone because you don't know whether the driver could just take a turn and drop you into some secret detention center.
Absolutely. Fantastic point to end it towards the end. What next for Mr. Farr? What we read on social media, everything, the talk, there's so much hullabaloo about what next for SFR. SFR for president?
I have heard people say that. There's a nice ring to it. What do you think?
No, I'm here to ask the questions, not to answer them.
You're stealing my line.
Absolutely. We've reversed roles today. What next?
I have reached that stage in my life where selfishness, where the self, me, is no longer the ultimate consideration. Before my father died, he told me, the difference between your generation and mine is that we were ready to make sacrifices for our country. He said, the country had nothing in the 60s. He was posted to a place called Sinchinjabo. He did not have a clue where Sinchinjabo was. He knew that there was no electricity there. He would not have the luxury of a refrigerator or a fan. There wouldn't be any roads to take him there, but he was excited and willing to go. You know why? Public service. That is what the country needed. My generation is all about who we are as individuals and what do we want for ourselves and for our immediate families. And that is why many of us surrendered the most important space in our public interaction to those who are least capable to run our society. To great tragedy, we have to pay the price. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. There's a whole program on its own for another time. Yes, let us recover the spirit of independence, essentially, which we have lost. Thank you very much, Mr. SFL. There we have it. We went from the smiling coast to the snarling coast. Where next is our responsibility. Thank you very much, viewers, for joining us on The Viewpoint. Until next time, I'm Mamadou Mbodj. Goodbye.